It comes as no surprise that one of the biggest reasons anyone owns a PlayStation 5 these days is because of the mind-blowing graphics of its vast gaming library. So I decided to compile a list with my top picks of the PS5 games with the best graphical fidelity. But why stop there? I also made sure each and every game on this list plays like a dream, so they're all well worth your time and money. Let's waste no time. Number 10, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Upon first glance, it's obvious why this game makes the list. It runs great, it looks fantastic, and it just feels right. When you're playing any kind of game based on famous comic book heroes, the one thing people ask is whether or not it makes you feel like you're in the hero's shoes. And in the case of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, I can vouch for that. Yes, it absolutely makes you feel like Spider-Man. But what that of course can do is that not everybody really notices how good the updated graphics looks, especially when compared to previous iterations. I suppose the reason for that is how fantastic the first Insomniac Spider-Man looked on the PS4. However, all you have to do is check out some comparison videos to see just how huge of a stride the wall crawler has made over the years. There's just so much going on that it's hard to stop and smell the roses. When you do, you'll understand precisely why Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is on this list. Number 9, Demon's Souls. This next game is honestly something I never thought I'd be talking about because of how unlikely the whole situation was. There was a time when Demon's Souls was about as obscure a title as you could get, to the point where even the higher-ups at Sony hated the title at release. Even when Dark Souls changed the gaming landscape for good, Demon's Souls was still known as its obscure older brother. Now it's been remade into a PS5 title and it looks marvelous. When it comes to the most mind-blowing games of the PS5, it has to be something that strikes a different chord from the rest. Demon's Souls plays the beat of its own drum, and Blueprint Games did its absolute best to carry the original game's unique aesthetic to the PS5. If you haven't yet tried the first game in the Souls series, I can't recommend Demon's Souls enough. Number 8, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Regardless of what you might think of the Avatar films, there's no denying that the world building was incredible. This hyper-focused attention to detail brought the films to life, and the same thing can be said about Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Similar to the films, the game tries to immerse you into the world as much as possible, and all you have to do is watch some gameplay footage to see just how closely they managed to mimic the surreal nature of the movies. This is the kind of game where the gameplay takes a back seat to the rest of the world. In games such as Skyrim and Oblivion, the world is considered the main character. In Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, you can be sure that the developers went with the same mindset. Number 7, Gran Turismo 7. For most racing game enthusiasts, Gran Turismo tends to be the gold standard when it comes to racing sims that try to blur the line between gaming and reality. Sure, that might seem like a stretch, but does anyone remember Gran Turismo 4 for the PS2? I'm almost 100% certain I activated some old memories about how blown away people were by its graphical fidelity. Even for a PS2 game, Gran Turismo 4 started to look real. Now we're in the PS5 era, and Polyphony Digital has accomplished marvels with the 7th title in the franchise. Sure, it might not be the most immersive racing sim out there, but when it comes to looks, nothing else is even close. Some people go so far as to set up expensive racing rigs to play Gran Turismo 7, and based on the footage online, it's worth every penny. If you want to be blown away by realistic racing graphics, Gran Turismo 7 is a heck of a pick. Number 6, Horizon Forbidden West. It comes as entirely no surprise that Horizon Forbidden West has a place on this list. In fact, its previous game would probably be in the running if it had been released on the PS5, even if it looked exactly the same as it did on the PS4. Horizon Forbidden West is what one would call a perfect storm of a game. It's a title that manages to bring to life just about every aspect that matters. It has stunningly detailed facial expressions and performances, a fantastic open world, and incredible cybernetic beasts to overcome. As far as games with mind-blowing graphics are concerned, it's not a proper list without the inclusion of Horizon Forbidden West. Number 5, Octopath Traveler 2. This might seem like an odd pick for those of you looking for the absolute best in graphical fidelity, but hear me out for a second. There was a time when the sprite-based aesthetic of Final Fantasy III, also known as Final Fantasy VI in Japan, on Mode 7 of the Super Nintendo was considered the pinnacle of gaming graphics. Many gamers look fondly to what's often considered the golden age of gaming, and their rose-tinted glasses will make these older games look so much better than they actually were. Octopath Traveler 2, much like the first game, gives you a glimpse into what young gamers must have felt when they first played these groundbreaking titles on the Super Nintendo. It takes the 2D-based sprites of yore and breathes new life, creating an experience unlike any other. Of course, it also helps that Octopath Traveler 2 is incredible, even without taking into account its mind-blowing and innovative graphics. Number 4, Resident Evil 4, 2023. You know, the funny thing with the Resident Evil series is that the original Resident Evil 4 still looks great, all things considered. They took a more cinematic approach back then, which is quite different from how Capcom decided to handle this incredible remake. It has a much more hands-on approach compared to the original, but it most definitely plays to the game's strengths. I might as well lump in the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes as some of the best-looking remade games out there, but the 4th remake really takes the cake. The best part? The mind-blowing graphics of Resident Evil 4 can take a backseat to its even better gameplay. If you're looking for a game that's truly worth your time and money, this would be it. Number 3, Final Fantasy XVI. Final Fantasy has come a long way since its inception. The reason why the title was called Final Fantasy in the first place is because the producer genuinely thought it would be the very last title. This is likely also the reason why the first Final Fantasy feels way ahead of its time in terms of visuals and storytelling. The funny thing is, it feels like they've been tackling each and every rendition with the same do-or-die attitude. Every Final Fantasy released feels like it has something to prove, and the 16th iteration is no different. In this particular case, Square Enix decided to push for grand spectacle over everything else, and it most certainly shows. While some claim it doesn't have the same amount of depth as previous titles, don't let anyone stop you from experiencing what Final Fantasy XVI is all about. If you want a great story, fantastic cinematic flair, and giant kaiju battles, this game can do no wrong. Number 2, The Last of Us Part 1. The Last of Us, alongside Ghost of Tsushima, are considered the greatest swan songs of any console generation. In this case, The Last of Us was released late into the PS4's life cycle, and it pretty much blew everyone away. If I were making a list of PS4 games with the most mind-blowing visuals, you can bet that The Last of Us will be a part of it. That said, Naughty Dog went ahead and remastered this diamond in the rough, which is why I have The Last of Us Part 1 for the PS5. It pretty much took everything you loved from the original and gave it a shiny coat of paint. I find it amusing that they took one of the finest looking games on the PS4 and decided that it needed to be one of the best looking games on the PS5. Number 1, God of War Ragnarok. Here we are at number 1 with God of War Ragnarok. Was it really such a surprise? The God of War series has always been one to push the envelope as far as visual fidelity and spectacle are concerned. God of War 2 was pretty much one of the best looking games on the PS2, and they followed that trend with God of War 3 for the PS3, and then the God of War PS4 title. Each and every game was visually stunning, and it had so much more to offer than just graphical fidelity. As such, it comes as no surprise that God of War Ragnarok and its incredible DLC, which is free by the way, is one of the best looking games on the PS5 to date. It's the kind of game that does everything right, all the while looking downright immaculate. You know, the best thing is that the PS5, in a way, still is in its infancy, and you can expect many more game releases to blow your mind as far as graphics are concerned. Personally, I can't wait to see what surprises the next year has in store for us. But until then, feel free to tell me what you're looking forward to, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're down there. Bye for now.